Hello, this is Patrick. Today we're going to be talking about animation in Maya. The objective of what we're going to do today would be a simple bouncing ball. I know it's been done to death, but it is the fundamentals and it shows off a lot of techniques and settings that we need to look at to have this thing going. So first things first, this is the home screen of Maya 2013. On default, it is a gradient background, so sometimes it's not the best background for all that we do. So a very quick tip would be keyboard shortcut to switch between the different backgrounds would be alternate B. Okay, B for Bencoolen. So right, so you have like dark gray, light gray, gradient, black. So feel free to toggle to whatever suits your comfortable for your eye at the moment. I'm going to be using my right click and the markup menus for creating my primitives. So if you are not really familiar with that, please use whatever method that you want to. So I have this sphere. I'm not worried about how many divisions and whatnot. So I have this sphere. I need to put it on the ground. So before I do that, animators, I feel, to even have a simple ball going, you need to know a little bit about the relationship of parenting, right, and pivot points. So at some point in time, my sphere has to be rotating around the center, right? So for this, I would be saying that this ball is the lowest in the hierarchy. That means at the lowest level, it's going to have a few parents that does different things. So on the lowest level, it's going to be, the pivot has got to be in the center, okay, where it's going to be rotating around its own center. So I'm going to keep that here. Layout that I like to use a lot is the safe layout and perspective and outliner. On a higher resolution display, you would see the icon here. So you just put your mouse over it and it would just say perspective / outliner. So doing that would bring me here, which I will have a good look at the things in my scene all the time. So now I have this sphere and 4 hidden cameras representing my 4 views if I switch to the 4 viewports. So I'm gonna put a parent on top of this. So select nothing, okay, and go to edit and group, right? So if I group with nothing selected, empty transform node will be put for me, and I can just use my middle mouse click to drag on the sphere. Click on the middle mouse and drag it in until the dotted box is totally surrounding this null one. When I release my mouse button, this P-sphere will be parented under this null. Okay, so when I select the null, the sphere will be selected, right? And when I move it, the sphere would be, the null would have moved. So okay, so I'll undo that. Okay, so the null has not moved, and then I move it. So the null has moved, and if I click on the sphere beneath, it has not moved, but the parent has, so it's moving together with the parent. So that is the very basic, I'm just undoing this. Okay, so that is the very basic fundamentals of parenting hierarchy, and in fact is the basic of rigging. Okay, if you want to do any kind of rigging and setup for mechanical or organic characters, absolutely have to know this. The thing about parenting is you can have a lot of parents. Okay, the child will always follow the parent, but the child will also have the freedom to move around on its own. Just a simple setting of keys. So now this is my frame range from 1 to 24. I'm going to set a key. So I'm going to move along this x-axis, which is coincide with the world right now. So x-axis, right click, key selected. So once I've set a keyframe, this guy turns red, okay, and I see a red tick here. So maybe across 24 frames I need it to move by like 5 or 6 units. Notice that there's this red, this key icon here that's red. So this is the auto key. This is turned on and this is turned off. So if I don't turn it on and I move it, when I move my timeline back to frame 1, or just move it along here and go back to frame 24, you see that it snaps to the last known key. Therefore, no keyframe has been inserted until I do a set key like what I did just now. So gonna move that again roughly to about 5 units. Okay, and then to make this work and have a keyframe here so it remembers the final position, I have to right click on my selected, so I'm just doing a left click here to select my attribute, right click and key selected. So that's what I did just now, and look, there's a new keyframe indicated by the red line. So now if I scrub on my timeline, I see that the ball moves from the first position to the last position. So that is my keyframes and the simplest animation that you can do in Maya. So if I wanted to remove this keyframe, oops, right click and delete. Right, so that keyframe has been deleted. So this could be confusing because besides translate, I could have something else going on at the last frame, and it will all be denoted by this red keyframe. So let me do an example. So if I have a translate Z and I have a scale X, translate Z and scale X. So all these are denoted by just one red tick. So if I do a right click and delete, you can see that this being the only keyframe for the translate Z and scale X, both have this red color taken off. That means they now have totally no keyframes in the timeline. Okay, so be very careful what you're setting key on. You might not want to use this to right click and delete that keyframe because it deletes multiple it deletes all the attributes keys set on that frame. So if I wanted to delete that keyframe, okay, so let's say I have a translate X key and a translate Z key. Okay, if I wanted to delete that keyframe, one other way that we can view this keyframe data would be to go to Windows, Animation Editor, Graph Editor. So whatever I have selected, okay, this graph editor comes out, and these are the attributes that have keyframes in them. So translate X and translate Z. So translate X has two keyframes. This is frame 1 that we set just now, and then this is the new one. And translate Z only has one keyframe, therefore it has no line that joins a couple of keys. Okay, so if I wanted to delete the keyframe on translate Z, I would just go into the translate Z attribute and using my keyframe select mode, okay, just draw a rectangle or just directly just click on that, and then using my delete key on the keyboard, hit it, and you can see that the attribute is gone as well. So that's the way to just precisely target a single key that you're trying to target. Okay, so we've looked at setting keys and explicitly having to so let's just recap. I'm going to delete this key, so I only have this translate X. So recap, so go to the new frame where I want the new position to be, use my transformation tools, move this to a new orientation or location. That's not done. I have to select my attribute, right click, key my selected to have a second key, and have this position stored and remembered by Maya. So then we have an animation. Okay, so let's return to what we have. Okay, I'm going to show you the second method, which involves this auto key icon. So if I just hit this auto key turned on, okay, I'm going to delete all that. Okay, so it's restored to the default state, but I have this auto key turned on. When I'm having this auto key turned on, I'm going to do my set key selected on translate X just as before. I'm going to go to frame 24. This time I'm going to move my sphere to about 5 units. Okay, look what happens when I start moving. Look what happens to this keyframe information when I release my mouse button. Okay, I'm going to release that now. You can see that immediately there is a keyframe generated, And now, without doing any set key, I'm gonna scrub my timeline, and it already stores that keyframe and it sets it for us. Okay, so I'm gonna delete this key. If I want to delete more than one keyframe, I can right click this one, delete, go to the last frame, and delete. But that's gonna take quite a long time. So to delete multiple keyframes within a range, I can do a shift left mouse button drag. So this red band, I'm not letting go of my shift or my mouse, so I'm going to shift mouse drag to define a range. Okay, so I've released my mouse and my keyboard, so this is the range I've defined, and within that range I can right click, I can copy my keyframes, I can paste my keyframes, I can of course cut my keyframes and then delete my keyframes. So with this range in action, I can just delete. Okay, and you can see that there are no keyframes left and there are no animation. So I can just type 0 in my translate X, and this guy returns to the origin. So from 0 to 24, no animation. If I were to do the same as I did Y, okay, so at frame, I keep saying frame 0, but actually it's frame 1. So frame 1, I go to frame 24, I move. Okay, does it set a key? It does not set a key on frame 1 or 24. So how does auto keyframe works? So auto keyframe works, I'm going to restore it to 0. Auto keyframe works when I have an initial keyframe to begin with. So for example, now my animation, I'm going to animate it with starting from frame 6 to frame 18, so to give us some kind of variation. And okay, at frame 6, I'm going to set key on translate X. So then I have my red, my attribute value turns red, so indicating that I have a keyframe. And indeed, I have a tick here, red tick, indicating that there is a first keyframe in my attribute. And then at frame 18, I begin moving. When I release my mouse button, I will see this red band here. Okay, and when I move my timeline, it remembers. So remember, we need to set the first keyframe, and then go to another frame, and then when we start moving on the same value, then it will set a keyframe for us. So if I did not set that keyframe, having auto key on doesn't change anything. So I'm gonna again just to show you the delete. So shift left mouse button and drag, so it encompasses these two keyframes, and then right click, I can delete. Okay, delete. Right, so it's gone. Let me undo that. Okay, bring back both my keyframes. I'm gonna do the same thing. Shift left mouse button encompasses these two keyframes, and with this I can actually move a range of keys. So if there are like 5 keys, 10 keys in between my range, they will all be affected by whatever I'm gonna do. So if I put my mouse button in this double arrow icon and left click and drag, you can see that I'm dragging this range around, and these two keyframes that were at 6 and 18 now becomes at 4 and 16. So I can actually offset keys like that. Okay. So now when after I've done shifting them around, I can just go to another frame outside of that range, outside of this red band, and click. Okay, so that deselected that range of keys, and you can see that nothing's happening at my original 8 to 16. Well, yeah, outside of that range of keyframe. But when I go back in, you can see that my animation, instead of starting at frame 6, has now offsetted like 5 frames, and at 18 is offsetted, that end frame of my animation is offsetted to 13. Right? One more technique for animation. Sorry, I'm just jumping all over the place, and as we're going along, we come into new situations where we need to get stuff done, and I'll show you how to do it. So let's say I'm going back to, at 24 frames, I wanted to go back to the original, or original point where I started off. So I know that my first keyframe is my original point. Of course, we know that the attribute is 0. So very fast, I can just go to 24, key in 0, enter on my keyboard, and it goes back, and I know that it starts exactly at the same keyframe as frame 1. Sorry, I just keep saying frame 0. So frame 1. So it goes back, right? So I'm gonna delete this for a while. Okay. What happens if I like where the sphere is on frame 4, and I want this value, I want this ball to end its animation on this position. So it's going to go from 0 to 5 units and then end back at this position, whatever value this is. Okay, so of course I can just click on this ball and go to frame 4. Okay, one thing to note, we are not animating the position of the sphere, so there's no animation, but we are animating the position of the parent. So at frame 4, the null 1, which I've been animating on, has its x position at 0.8. Of course, again, I can just go back to frame 24 and just key in 0.8, and I'll be exactly at frame 4. But sometimes it's not so easy. Okay, sometimes maybe like I have like 0.82532, and then I have to remember all that number and 0.532, and even then it may not be the same because there may be more decimal places that Maya's not showing me, and I'm just too lazy to find out. So that's one method actually. So the second method that I'm going to show you, okay, there are actually 3 methods now that I think of it. So at frame 4, I can actually sort of remember where this position is by clicking on my attribute, right click, key selected. So what happens then? It sets a keyframe. I'm not letting go of my right click, so yeah. Okay, so key selected. So once I key this, I have a red tick, right? So this sort of marks where the sphere is. Okay, so but I don't need this key here. I need this key at the back. This animation was doing fine. I don't want to add another keyframe here to mess up the animation, but I just did a set key to get a keyframe with this value here. So now all we need to do is move this keyframe to the back, right? So just now what I did was shift left drag. I'm selecting a range of frames, but right now I just need one frame, so shift left mouse button, and I don't need to drag, so I'm just letting go right now. So you can see that this red band actually is just filling up one frame, okay, and that's selecting just one keyframe. Right click, and I can cut. Okay, so it's gone. Let me go to, with the same thing selected, don't deselect this. Okay, so go to frame 24, right click here, we have something cut, so paste, paste. So most of the time you want to use paste, not paste connect. Okay, if you're interested to find out what paste connect is, read the help documentation. Okay, but most of the time we're just doing paste. So paste and paste, and you can see that it brought the keyframe back and pasted it on 24, and on frame 24 I can see that this value is 0.8, exactly at how I captured it here. It's been moved, sort of, it's been taken out and then placed back in here. So I have my animation and going back to exactly this frame 24, right? So that's basically how we can do it. The third way that I'm gonna do it, oh no, this is still way number 2. So we did a cut and paste. How about I'm gonna do the same thing, shift left click, select this tick. Instead of cut and paste, I'm gonna slide it to frame 24. So the way to do it is exactly like just now how I was offsetting this range of keyframes from 6 to 18 to 1 to 13. So now taking this frame 4, I'm gonna aim for this double arrow left and right in the center of this, left click on my mouse and slide it and drag it. So you can see that I'm just dragging my keyframe and then letting it go at frame 24. So now I'm just going to click anywhere else just to deselect that selection in the timeline. Alright, and then let me just scrub it through. You can see that it is doing what I wanted it to do, and at frame 24 it's at 0.8. So that value got offsetted in time and then ended up at frame 24. Okay, so that's the second way I'm gonna do my animation. I'm gonna end this up on 0.8 at frame 24. So I'm gonna delete this last keyframe. So the third and final method, which is my preferred method actually, so we have our original animation, okay, but I want to take frame 4 and get that value and set a keyframe at frame 24, right? So the third method, the third thing that you can do is, I want you to notice that we've been using left mouse drag all along, but if I now at frame 6, if I use my middle mouse drag, okay, middle mouse, I'm just going to hold down the middle mouse button and move it along the timeline and drag it, you can see that nothing is happening, nothing is updated, values don't change, the position of my sphere doesn't change. Okay, so what I've done is to freeze all everything in the scene so Maya doesn't evaluate the new values from frame to frame. Okay, so how is this useful? So that means at frame 4, while this guy is still 0.8 or whatever value that we want it to be, okay, I can just use my middle mouse button, click it, drag it to frame 24, so it's still remembering 0.8 and nothing's changed in the scene. Okay, and now at frame 24 with the right value, I can right click and key selected. Okay, so now I'm going to use my left mouse and drag it again. Okay, and now it comes back to, goes from this value 5.118 to back to this value. So you can see that we've achieved the same thing, okay, with all three methods. We could keyframe, okay, we could slide the keyframe, we could cut and paste the keyframe, and we can type it in, and we can also use my middle mouse button to freeze everything in my scene, move my current time to a new frame, and then key whatever value I want. Okay, so hope that's not too confusing for you. So we've covered hierarchy, parenting, okay, by middle mouse drag, objects inside my parent. Okay, so just a quick demonstration of what's happening. I can, at frame 0, okay, while my parent is still at 0, 0, 0, I can grab my middle mouse, grab my sphere, and put that in until it becomes a line, okay, and release it. Okay, that brings it from under that parent, so that it's no longer a child of anybody, so it's a child of the world. So, but if I continue to select my parent, and if I update my keyframe, my current time, you can see that this parent is still hard at work. Just that if I start to play this, I won't see anything because my parent is just a point that carries an animated translation in space. However, why I'm able to see it, because I'm selecting it and I'm in the move tool, and the move tool shows me where that parent is, even though it does not have geometric shape, it does not have a shape, and it's not visible in the viewport, but at least I know where the position in space it is. Okay, so why that sphere was able to move in the first place was because it was carried along by the parent. So, for example, one last illustration to show what I'm talking about. I'm going to hide this sphere and select the sphere and hit Ctrl H on my keyboard, H for Holland, okay, yeah, and H for hydrogen also. So I'm gonna bring in a cube. This time I'm gonna parent my cube. It's a different shape, right? I'm gonna parent this under the null. So second method of parenting, select this cube, shift, select this null. So select the cube first, select the null, then I'm gonna do a parent or shortcut key, small letter P on your keyboard. So hit parent. So the second selected object becomes the parent. So in my outliner, exactly the same way. Okay. So now I have this cube, new shape, and my parent is in the center, the origin of the world, and then my cube is also in the origin of the world. And then now when I play, you can see that my cube did exactly the same thing that the sphere did, but the cube and the sphere did not have animation on them. They are merely being carried along by the parent. Okay, so thank you for watching. Okay, we're gonna go more into parenting hierarchy, and then as promised, we're gonna set up a bouncing ball.